Hi, I'm Chris Downs, a writer for Microsoft Access. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a mailing label report in Access. I'll use the label wizard to create the labels, and I'll use the customers table as the record source. I could also use a query as the record source, or even a form or report. I'll start by making sure the table is selected, and then on the Create tab in the Reports group, I'll click Labels. If you're working in a web database, the Labels command is located under Client Reports. That's because reports created by the Label Wizard are not compatible with the Publish to SharePoint feature. You can still create them in a web database, but the label report will only be available when the database is open in the Access client. So when you click the Labels button, you might see a security notice. Click Open and Access starts the Label Wizard. The first step is to select the kind of labels you're using. In this case, I'm using Avery brand labels. That's the default manufacturer that is shown in the wizard. If you're using a different brand of labels, you can select it from the manufacturer list and then find the specific product in the list box. If you can't find or don't know the manufacturer of your labels, you can enter custom values by clicking Customize, selecting your unit of measure and label type, and then clicking New. This opens the New Label dialog box. You can change the unit of measure and the label type and the orientation, and you can specify how many labels there are across a page, and then you enter the exact dimensions right in these boxes, like so. Once you're done, you click OK and then close the New Label Size dialog box. Now that I've entered one custom label, the wizard changes to only Show Custom Labels. I'd rather use the measurements provided by the wizard, so I'll toggle back to the original display by clearing the Show Custom Label Sizes checkbox. So I'll select Avery Labels and product number 5260. On the next page, I select the text formatting that I want. The next page is where I lay out the label. Basically, you add the data fields you want and then also type in any spaces or punctuation you want on the label. Access estimates that I'll be able to fit 3 lines on each label, given the label dimensions and the text size that I chose. I think I'd rather have 4 lines on each label, so I'm going to click the back button and choose a smaller font size. I'll click Next, and now I see a 4th line is added to the prototype label. This is going to be a standard address label, so I'll start off with the person's first name. I'll select it in the field list and then click the arrow to add it to the prototype label. I also want the last name, so I'll add that in the same way. If I leave it like this, there won't be a space between the first name and the last name when I print the labels, so I'll add a space by clicking in between the fields on the prototype label and then pressing the spacebar. Now it's time to start the next line. I can just press Enter or click on the next line of the prototype label. I want the street address on this line, so I'll scroll down to the address field and then click the arrow button to add it to the prototype label. On the 3rd line, I'll put the city field, and then I'll just type in a comma and a space. Access has already selected the next field in the list, so I'll click the arrow button again to add the state-province field, followed by a couple of spaces, and then the zip postal code field. And on the 4th line, just the country region field. If you accidentally add a field you don't want, you can just delete it by pressing backspace, or by selecting the field and pressing Delete. I think I have this laid out correctly, so I'll click Next. On this page, I can select a sort order for the labels. For example, a bulk mailing center might want the labels sorted by the zip or postal code. So I'll just find that field in the available fields list and double-click it to add it to the Sort By list. And within the postal code, I'll sort by last name. On the next page, I'll enter a name for this new report, Customer Mailing Labels, Avery 5260. And I just want to see how they look when I click Finish. Access creates the labels and notifies you if there are any problems. With some label sizes, you'll see an information message like this saying there's not enough horizontal space for everything to fit. For now, I'll just ignore this message and click OK to clear it. Access opens the labels in Print Preview mode. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see how they look. The spacing and punctuation look good, so I'll zoom back to 100%. At this point, I like to print a single page of the labels, but just on plain paper. Then I slip the printout underneath a sheet of labels and hold the sheets up to a light so that the text shows through the labels. This helps me see if the alignment is right without wasting a sheet of labels if it turns out to be wrong. It looks like these do line up, so I'm going to load up the printer with labels and print them out. But what about this message about the margins? The message doesn't appear with all label products, but when it does appear, it's basically a side effect of the measurements of the labels. In this case, the labels come very close to the left and right edges of the sheet, so the wizard has to specify some values that are outside of the normal printing range. That causes the message to appear when you preview or print the labels. If you're happy with the alignment of the text on the labels, and you're not getting a blank page every other page, then I recommend leaving it the way it is and just clicking OK on the message each time. You can try tweaking the alignment and page settings in Design View, and you might succeed in getting rid of the message, but it's likely you'll just ruin the label alignment. But if that happens, you can always run the wizard again and create a new label report. One last note about working with labels, or any other report that prints in columns. When you view a multiple column report in Report View or Layout View, Access displays all the data in a single column. Print Preview is the only view you can see the columns as you laid them out. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll check out more articles and videos at office.com.